Good morning. Good morning. Um, yes, I have Bella here, and she is going to think that I am talking to her because she doesn't see the rest of you. Good morning, Letty. And Cindy, good morning. So she's going to be hanging around for a bit. Sometimes, the baby just wants to be held, and that's what we're going to do. So, yeah, she is a little cutie. She has a nickname. We call her Shredder. Yeah. I swear she can find any piece of paper anywhere, and in moments, it's just little bits of pieces. Yeah. But that's okay. We love her anyways. So, what are we going to talk about today? Oh, I know. We're going to talk about compensating for the push and pull that happens in creating letters. And I tried to find the post again. There was a post this week. Shredder. Yes. There was a post this week where a new digitizer was creating letters and she couldn't understand why they weren't stitching properly. So, of course, I sent a reply back explaining a little bit about. Cindy, that is absolutely right. Only we really don't want to encourage this. Cindy's saying now you don't need to send out the important documents to have them shredded. Oh, yeah, but we really, really don't want to encourage this. No, yeah. So, so I sent her a post and um, talked about making the letters look a little bit more natural and pushing and pulling. And I thought today would be a good day for that subject. So here we are. We're going to talk about creating letters and the push and pull. All right. All right. So what I did here, ta-da! What I did here was I just created a short line of letters that have both flat columns, horizontal columns, and vertical columns, along with curved pieces, which is very important. Cindy, thank you. I lost my icon. There it is. Thank you. Sounds good. I love learning. So do I. And I love sharing what I learn. So here we are. We're going to, I'm sorry, she's such a distraction. Sorry, baby, you got to go. All right. Go on. Go lay down. Oh, so I'm going to enlarge the screen. I want to show you what I do when I create letters. There we are. All right. And of course, these are not exact. These are guidelines. I create a set of guidelines for both the top area and the bottom area. I agree, Letty. The B and the Q's, yeah, it's that curve and that horizontal column. So again, I create guidelines. And the center guideline, this one here, is my baseline. What does that mean? That means ideally where I want the letters to actually stitch out and align with. Um, who is it? Sorry, Eric Campbell. It's one of my favorite teachers. He says all the time that if it looks perfect on the screen, it's not going to stitch out perfect on the machine. And that's because of push and pull. So what we have to do is we have to know how to create these letters to compensate for that push and pull. And again, that's where the guidelines come into play. When it stitches, I want all of these letters to follow straight across the guideline, top and bottom. So how do I do that? I need to remember I need to remember that when I create a satin stitch in the horizontal, it's going to, when it stitches, it's going to push and get longer, right? And when I create that same horizontal, I suppose it'd help if I picked up my tool. When I create that same satin column in a vertical, I know that it's going to stitch and get longer because the stitch is going to push in the direction that it's stitching. The other thing to keep in mind is that it's going to get thinner, just like lacing up your shoes. When you pull those laces tight, the gap gets narrower. When you pull your satin column stitches tight, they get narrower. Okay, so let's get rid of this. We know, I'm sorry, I'm having Saturday morning blockage. Here we go. So we know that we need to make a horizontal column can lay on the baseline, and it needs to be just a little bit shorter with the end. Though, of course, if you're running both of them at the same size, you're going to end them at the same place, they will push out the same amount. So they will still be aligned. But if you absolutely have to have them exactly where the line is, Cindy, you want to know if you set them all at the same measurement, should they sew okay? Are you suggesting that if I make a line of letters and they're all 5 millimeters tall, that they will stitch okay? Is that what you're asking? Because if that is, the answer is going to be no. Because your vertical columns, like this A, actually needs to be about, if we're talking like 5 millimeters, needs to be 5 millimeters and a bit. Oh, excuse me, needs to be under 5 millimeters because it's going to grow. It's going to push out. All right. So here, let's do that. Let's do an A. I guess it should help if I talk about the other lines here. So the center one is my baseline. Oh, that's a good thought too, Letty. She's also asking if Cindy means the horizontal part of the E. If you copy that segment, will it be the same? Cindy comes back, yes, but the cross columns will split. Just the verticals all the same. I'm still not understanding. So maybe I'll just cover it naturally. All right. So the upper line is a guideline for where I want my curved columns. Because remember, just like cinching, the curved column is going to come down. It's going to get a little narrower. This inside line is the stop for my verticals because my verticals are going to grow. So the goal is that they come to the baseline. Okay, so let's start with this A. Of course, we have our cross member here, and we don't want any gapping. So we're gonna come inside the body of the A. Now there are a couple of different ways you can make this A. We're going to do one that's quick. It looks good. Um, it works better for smaller letters. And I'm going to start right here at the base. Just to make this quick. All right. So there's a letter A. Now here's the thing. Yes, I have a slight horizontal column here. So I know that I can put that directly on the baseline. I'm going to take off my background. I can put that directly on the baseline. I can go in, I can edit my nodes so it lays directly on that baseline. Then I can come down here and I know that it's going to push out. So if I leave it on my lower baseline, if I leave it on this center column, it will push out and it will be much lower. Well, we don't want that, do we? So what do? We make it smaller. Now, the question is, how much smaller? How much smaller? That's going to be a trial and error and testing because it's going to depend on the size of your letter. Obviously, you need more adjustment um, visually for smaller letters um, and less adjustment for larger. I know that sounds weird, but it's because visually it's only going to come down a couple of stitches, which looks much smaller in an adjustment and in a compensation than with the larger, or excuse me, the smaller letters, which are going to visually look like they need more. So this one, I know, needs to come up shorter. Let's go look at this over here. Okay, so here's our A. Again, we know that the horizontal up here is going to be fine. If anything, it might cinch in a little bit, but not. Cindy was asking about the starts and stops. Change the push. Your underlay is going to play a lot with that. You want to take in consideration your starts and stops for the knot. When you stop, the machine's going to make a 3-stitch knot, and that knot can be very visible. We'll show you that in just a moment. So as you can see, our column here is still down on that baseline, and it's going to push down more. So we want to bring it up. By my own experience, let's get back here. I want to make that even. Oops, where'd it go? There it is. So I want to make this even. And then from my own experience, I have found, where is it? There we are. I have found that the push is about 2 stitches. So if I take this, here's a stitch, 1, 2. So if I take this and I raise it up, what amounts to about 2 stitches, it will naturally come down about those same 2 stitches. 2 stitches across. Now we're going to talk about that knot. Do, do, do. Do, do, do. Okay, so this is our end spot right here. This is where it naturally ended, but it's going to show a knot there. If you don't want that knot to be prominent, you might want to hide it up someplace else. Someplace that's going to have a natural intersection to where it won't visually be seen. So tuck it up. I like to tuck them up in a little corner here. So that it's up in that little corner. What that means is that the file is going to stitch across, and it'll pick up here and come down, and it will still push here, but then it'll come down with a travel and push back up. So that might, you're right, Cindy, that might change our compensation. Let's go change our underlay. Remember, I use a center run underlay for narrow columns. We measure this. This column is 3.5 millimeters wide. So I would actually use a zigzag for that one. I'm going to change this to a zigzag. Now we're going to watch it stitch. You ready? Zigzag. Wants to push over here. Of course, our horizontal. Pushes down, pushes down, pushes down, pushes down, travels, pushes up, pushes up, pushes up. So it's quite possible that this is actually going to need to come down another half stitch or another stitch. So if you look at that at a distance, that that second leg looks longer. I mean, it is, but when it stitches, the second leg is going to come down to the center baseline, and the first leg is going to come down to the center baseline. Yes, Cindy, exactly. The underlay and the fabric you're working on is going to dictate where these stops are. Okay, so that's the push. That's compensating for the push and pull. Remember, your horizontals, you want to compensate left to right, and the verticals, you want to compensate up and down. Now let's bring our image back. Letty, what was the other letter? It was Q and B. All right, let's do a B. B's can be tricky because when you write the letter B, you want to come down with this back, and then you, well, this is the way I write a letter B. I come down, then I come back up, pick up my first bubble, and then my second bubble. Well, if we do that, and I'm making a quick B here. First bubble, second bubble. That B looks kind of choppy, wouldn't you think? There's a possibility that this back vertical is going to gap because it's going to cinch up. It's going to cinch and it's going to push out. All right. This one is going to push out. Where'd it go? But is it going to push out enough to reduce that gap? The same with the bottom bubble. Is it going to push out enough to reduce that gap? And then because we drew it the way I write it, these ends are going to be visible and it looks choppy. So when I do a B, we're going to take this and we're just going to move it off to the side. When I do a B, I want the center bar to be the last bit I digitize. And I want to do this in one element. I don't want to do it in 3 elements like I did this one. I want to do it in one element. So I start at the bottom of the first bubble. Create my curves. Follow my guideline for my horizontal. Now, what's happened here? Creating my bubble, ending on top of the previous line. So now it's one smooth action. And what's happened here, this vertical is not a vertical anymore. Yes, it's vertical. It's laying top to bottom. But because I made one smooth action, it becomes part of the horizontal. Oop, that's not what I want to show you. There you go. This is all considered one part. It becomes part of the horizontal. It goes up and over and over and over, and then it shifts direction, but not until after it finishes the horizontal. So it's no longer vertical, it's a horizontal. Now, the only thing we have to worry about is whether this end is going to be enough to prevent the gapping. And what I do, looks like it closed itself up. What I do is I put it right on the stitch line that it's going to bump up against, because I know that it's going to push into the back column. All right. And again, I want to hide this knot in some place that's going to be a little more natural. Okay. Oh, that was on the wrong place. Yeah, I don't want it exactly there. there. Oh, there we go. I don't want this to pop out and be on top. Okay, so that's what I would do for the B. Makes a much smoother B than this one that was chopped up with 3 elements. Okay, let's go do that C, because that C, just like an S, just like a Q, just like an O. Did I miss any? Oh, the U, which has that bottom curve. The G also has an upper curve. They all need special compensation. We know that when we're reading a book or we're reading a line of text, when we read across, if we analyze, if we look at those letters, the S's, the C's, the O's, the Q, the G, anything with that curve, you're going to see that that curved area is naturally higher than the baseline. It's going to extend out past the baseline. And that's because your eye visually cuts the stop right here. Your eye visually stops seeing the letter at this point. If we were to make that letter shorter at our baseline, it would actually look that much shorter in our stitch out. So what we want to do is make sure that we compensate by bringing that curve above our baseline. Does this all make sense? Are you guys catching this? Again, because we have that same type of curve at the bottom. Of course, that's one of the sloppiest letter C's I've ever made. But you can see we took that curve right above. And again, that's about 2 stitches. What would be, if we were doing a horizontal, that would be about 2 stitches. Okay. I want to move on to the letter E. Just like the letter B, you want to write this as you naturally would, except just like the letter B, it'll be made in multiple elements, multiple lines, columns. And will it actually align? We want to do, just like the letter B, we want that vertical to be part of the natural horizontal. So here's our baseline, our E. And we make it part of the horizontal. She's playing with the cats. Of course, that one I should have stitched first. But yes, this is going to push out about 2 stitches. So what can we do? We can either leave it, depending on on how far we want those stitches to go, or we can just move them all back. What would amount to 2 stitches. And of course, if we do that, we want to maintain our offset. So we'll move the center bar over as well. And then, oops, we're going to move our stop here inside. And then we're going to take this one and make sure it stops somewhere that's going to hide the knot. So, oh, I think I've missed a couple of comments. Let me get up here and scroll down. I did. I missed a bunch of them. Sorry, my scroller wasn't scrolling. All right, let's go back. Cindy, I guess I should have originally said if doing an H, making both the vertical legs the same should sew the correctly. Yes, as long as you've compensated for your push and pull, you can do a copy and paste and then move that other leg over. Um, Here, let's just do that real quick. Find my H. Did I put an H up here? I did. There we go. Yay! So, with an H, make our center bar. And let's just pretend that this has already been compensated for the push and pull. If I take this and do a copy and paste, now I have one laying right on top of the other. I can use my arrow key and move it over. Of course, your software might be different, but the copy and paste should function, and you should be able to move it in position. Okay. Letty says, when I end up doing the bubbles first and then the straight piece. And then you get that three-part B, and all the compensations are going to make it look kind of wonky, and they may not come together. So again, if you can make the vertical part of the horizontal, it'll self-compensate. Is that a word we want to use? The problem Cindy's asking, going back to our letter B, she's asking, and I'm hoping I'm going to get this right for her. She's saying, would it be better to start on the bar on the bubble to have a clean connection so no gap? The problem with that, Cindy, if we start here, oh, where do we want? There. It's another option, but you still have to have an end someplace. So I'm making this B. I'm on that last bubble. The bar's already been done. So now I have an end that pushes into my first bubble. Personally, I prefer the horizontal on the B to stitch last so it pushes into the back vertical. I just think that's got a better look to it. Let's see if we can self-correct this by moving this and this. Yep. By changing my starts and stops, it automatically flipped where it was going. Let's see. Yep, and that's exactly it. Your B is going to have to end at someplace. So whatever look you prefer, just be consistent. Make that your letter B. Let's see. You want to sew on a wavy line? Yeah, because then you just never know where the compensation happens or has to happen. Oh, going back to the C, Cindy's saying if you make the letter C taller, what would you do to the next letter so it doesn't look smaller? Remember, when it comes to those curved letters, C, um, the bottom of the G, the O, the Q, S has a double curve, the bottom of the U. We want those on screen. We want those on our workspace to look wonky. We want them to look wonky, and we do not want to take what we've done for the letter C in consideration for what we're going to do to the next letter. Each letter is going to follow its ruling. Each letter is going to follow um, the the baseline as needed for that particular letter. Okay. Of course, you want to use the same baseline for whatever's in your line, but you want to make your compensation each letter individually. Where are we at? Yeah, did you guys hear the puppy in the background? She's out there playing with the cats. Um, they're just the cats are actually the two younger cats are actually uh, getting along with the puppy quite well. So I'm really happy with that. And Cindy says she confessed she's just thinking out loud. Um, oh, hey Frank, good to see you. Like the word city. So what you're saying is you've got the letter C, which we've made a little taller, and then we have an I. Well, let's see. Okay. So we have our C. Okay. We're going to get rid of this background. Back. Let's get rid of some of this. Okay. Now, we all know that for the most part, an I is just a vertical, right? Want to make sure that our angle is set to 0. Okay. We want to compensate our I to be shorter, right? Okay, now we're going to make a T. Make the T. I'm going to take my I, duplicate it, and move it over. Oh, I guess I could move it over more because, I got to put that bar across the top. Then we're just going to do a little cut and paste and flip. And my T, because it's going to be a horizontal, needs to be on the baseline. Of course, this part of the T can be shorter here. All right. How's it going? Facebook user. My dad used to have a book on, and I'm going to butcher this, typography. that I used to look at as a child, the rounded letters were extended even in hand lettering and print. And again, that's because our eye visually comprehends, visually sees that rounded letter cut off at the baseline. It doesn't really see that curve. I mean, the curve is there. Your head knows it, your eye sees it, but because all the letters are the same across, it visually puts them, makes them the same. So Cindy, we got one more letter to do for our word city, and this the one bar of the Y, and I duplicate and flip. And then I'm going to edit. This is how I know this is how I make the letters. Okay, so again, these are just pretty sloppy letters because we're just doing samples, right? We're not entering this into a competition for lettering, right? Right, right. You got it. All right. So again, these are going to, because they're vertical columns, these are going to come down. And again, it's going to go up because when it stitches out, it's going to elongate. Let's see how bad they look. You ready? So, let's get off that screen. All right. So that is how you compensate for lettering. And you know, those same compensations, those same guidelines for compensating for lettering can be used in all of your digitizing. The anytime that you're using a column of satin stitches, anytime you're using a column of satin stitches, determine, is it a curve? Is it going to be vertical? Is it horizontal? And think, how's it going to stitch? Is it going to cinch in on the sides? Is it going to elongate um, on the column? And then compensate. That's what the word compensate means. It means to adjust from what it is to what you want it to be. Do you still compensate the shape? Do you still compensate the shape if you are using compensation in software? So, what you're suggesting now, I use Wilcom. In this lesson, I'm using Wilcom. There are a couple of softwares out there that will compensate for push and pull. For push, it'll actually compensate and make it shorter, or compensate for pull, where it'll make it naturally make it wider to compensate for that cinching. Let's now I'm using Wilcom. It does not have a push compensation, so I will always have to remember to compensate for the satin column. But if I change this, I'm going to get rid of some of this here. Yeah. Come on, clean it up. Delete. Oh my goodness. Okay, so if we take this up higher and I change the underlay to an edge run. And I'm doing this because I want you to see this is our underlay. It is an edge run, which means it runs one on each side. And currently it is set at, what is it set at? 35 millimeters, or excuse me. I'm going to jump over here to Cindy's real quick. Cindy, if you're using tatami, would you still make the C taller? Yes. Thank you. All right. You didn't have to watch all of what I just did you? All right. Here, we'll do this again. Look. Okay. So I've cleaned all of this up. I have just one column of satin. And yes, Cindy, you still want to make the C taller because that is that's how you make a curved letter. It extends out past the baselines. Okay, so I have an edge run underlay. That edge run underlay is 0.35 millimeters in from the stitch line. My system has a compensation of 0.17, which is very, very minimally compensated. But I want you to watch, and I'm pretty sure this will work. I want you to watch these stitch lines. There we are. Okay. Going to increase the compensation to almost 1 full millimeter. Ready? Yeah. So because I've adjusted the compensation, it's actually going to stitch a longer satin knowing that it's going to pull in 1 millimeter. All right. I know this was an extreme example. When I do hats, yes, Cindy, I think you have it now. The eye needs to see the curved letters correctly. If you make the curved letters right at the baseline, your eye is actually going to make them shorter, which is going to make them out of alignment. They could be exactly across at the top of that baseline, but your eye is going to see it wrong. It's not going to like it. So just to finish up with the compensation, when I do, we'll go back to previous compensation. When I do hats, I increase it to a 0.3. I double the compensation just to give it a bolder look. So, yeah, that's what we got here. What do you think? No, Cindy, you're not slow. That curve is, if you're not making letters every day, that curve just throws you off. Don't worry about it. You got it. So, any other questions? Any other thoughts? Oh, oh, hello, Gina, and welcome to the show. You say you were thinking that the Wilcom underlay would increase to fit the wider compensation. No, because the underlay is laying to support the top stitches, and the compensation making that wider column is because you know that it's going to cinch in when it pulls. And again, that was an extreme example. Next week, and maybe this is something, make a note for yourself. Um, Next week, I want to talk to you about how to educate your customers on what expectations there are with embroidery. Um, and I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. One of which is I'm hoping that this will help a couple of people that I work with. Um, they come to me with a design file that has, 30, exaggeration, 30, 30 color changes, and they want it on left of center of the hat. You need to, as the machine operator, or you don't give your customers a chance, a choice. Yes. And Gina, you're welcome. Come back anytime. In fact, again, next week. And part of this is, how do you educate your customers as to what expectations they should have with embroidery? And you, the operator, or the person working with the customer, needs to be able to look at an artwork design and mentally, and this takes practice, and it takes time, but you need to be able to look at that artwork and say, yes, this is beautiful, but if this were mine and I wanted it there, this is what I would do, and explain to them why it doesn't, why something isn't going to work. And with that, where was I going? Yes, that's what I want to talk about next week. But with that, I have a bunch of sampler design files, um, for hat, to show what the different font sizes are. I have a compensation sampler, but I want to put all of those out there for you guys so you can download them, stitch them, and see for yourself the changes that happen in the stitch work. All right. And today we've almost hit an hour for my little half-hour show. We're pushing at an hour, so I hope I didn't take up too much of your time. Um, we'll see you next week. I'm going to go over to my little side panel here, and I'm going to say bye. Wasn't that fun? Do you have more questions? Do you want to learn something new? Join me at quicktostitch.com for coffee and conversation, and we'll talk about it. Embroidery machines, designs, and business. Hope to see you soon. Bye now. Wasn't that fun? Do you have